Opportunity to hear from people who are engaged and from those who can help us understand what we can do to begin to address this issue. I ask that you fill each of our speakers with your Holy Spirit and that they speak the words that you want us to hear. And I pray that it pricks our hearts and enables us to do the task that you have set before us. That this webinar will be to your honor and to your glory. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Okay, our first speaker is Kristen Carr with Not for Sale. So Kristen, will you share with us now?
Absolutely. So glad to be here with you guys. My name is Kristen Carr. I work with Not for Sale and an organization called Thrive Financial, and these two groups have partnered together to address trafficking specifically here in Houston. Houston has found itself a hub for trafficking in large part because we have two airports and a port, and I-10 runs straight through the middle of our city, and Department of Justice calls that the human trafficking corridor. So lucky for us, it is smack in the middle. And so we see a lot of instances of trafficking happening here in Houston. It's really encouraging to see the amount of NGOs that have partnered together here locally to address trafficking. This past September, the mayor declared September as Houston's Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and initiated a lot of events and things that have happened around that in order to increase awareness here in Houston. That was really encouraging. I get to serve on staff with Not for Sale. They're a really unique organization because they believe that everyone can engage their circle of influence to fight in this battle against human trafficking, and have provided platforms for people to engage just their normal everyday life in order to fight. And so they partner together with Juniper Networks to create a platform online. If you go to notforsalecampaign.org, there's a button there you can push called Empower, and it takes 2 seconds to fill out who you are and what's your circle of influence, and it gives you 5 action steps immediately to say how you can engage in this fight. And the idea here is whatever you do, whoever you are, you have a place in this fight against human trafficking. I think that we uniquely are asking something from churches, and after being on staff at a church for 6 years, I'm passionate about this specific area and this idea to engage in the fight against trafficking, and that is to consider adjusting your sourcing for T-shirts. As churches, we are notorious for purchasing tons and tons and tons of T-shirts, a lot of which have been created in supply chains that are ridden with forced labor and sometimes even child labor. So we're asking, and we partnered with a manufacturing plant in Cambodia that employs all adult workers being paid a living wage, that's provided us T-shirts that we can provide at wholesale prices. So that's a way that churches can engage that is a little different than just volunteering or offering time or money. So I think that's a really neat way to engage. Another option that we always talk about is switching your sourcing to for your coffee to fair trade coffee. There's another local organization here called Houston Rescue and Restore Coalition, and Kendra and I have been working together. She's been working very hard to get Houston declared a fair trade town, and the more churches that switch their sourcing on things like coffee or T-shirts, that all counts to help the numbers go up for organizations locally that are making choices to provide ethically sourced items, which means that we're getting closer and closer to being declared a fair trade town, which is great because it allows us to speak into a lesser talked about form of trafficking, which is labor trafficking. And so that's a really neat way to engage. One more thing would be to download the app from Not for Sale, Free to Work, and it's the number 2. I think that's there on the slide. That is a thing that we partnered with the ILO to produce and partnered alongside of Juniper Networks as well, and it just provides a list of companies that all of us purchase from on a daily basis and allows us to uniquely address trafficking simply by adjusting our purchasing, kind of in that way making our purchase our advocacy, and looking through those various companies that are listed there to see probability for child or forced labor, and then what they're doing about it, if they have verification policies in place, they have remediation policies in place, things like that. So those are a couple of things that are really neat opportunities that you can engage, probably uniquely with Not For Sale on. That's what we've been leaning into here in Houston, and some things that we're doing to take a different angle, I guess, on addressing trafficking.
Thanks, Kristen. Okay, next we have Cindy Dawson, Director for Global Women. Cindy, talk to us.
Hi, Nell. Thanks so much. Happy to be here. Well, Global Women's an ecumenical Christian nonprofit. We investigate global issues affecting women. We pray for these issues, and we trust God is going to call us to respond. And we believe our best response is to connect with indigenous Christian women leaders throughout the world who are involved in holistic ministries among women in their own communities. Since our inception 10 years ago, a major prayer effort has been placed on the issue of human trafficking, and our major response has been through our connection with the Beginning of Life in Chisinau, Moldova. Now, this is an organization founded 8 years ago by Yulia Yubovok. She's a Christian psychologist and counselor who works throughout the whole year leading her team on behalf of trafficked and at-risk women in our country. Some may ask, why Moldova? Well, it's estimated that tens of thousands of Moldovan women have fallen victim to human trafficking. Most victims come from the countryside, where economic hardships and ignorance tends to turn girls into easy prey for traffickers. Moldova is one of the largest source countries for traffickers. It's a small country and also the poorest country in Europe with very few job opportunities. Students, for example, in high schools generally don't even imagine going to college. They just want to find a lucrative job in another country as soon as they can graduate. Yulia has shared with me before that students often have two motives for wanting jobs outside their country. One, they are genuinely committed to their families, and they want to provide income to help with the needs. Or two, the young generation in Moldova is like those in many other countries. They want to be able to buy trendy clothes, nice iPhones, computers, and they want to travel to exciting places. So they're always looking for good job opportunities. And what often happens, especially in Moldova, a young person, single or married, may be offered what seems to be a dream job come true in a resort area, let's say in Turkey. And so they jump at the offer. They take a ferry ride not too far to Turkey, and there they are abducted, raped, drugged, their documents are stolen, and they're lost many times, often forever, as they become part of that trafficking web and are trafficked really all around the world. Yulia and her team agrees that trafficking prevention in high schools is a wise use of the funding that Global Women and other groups send to them. They said they can use $3,000 in a year to try to rehabilitate one woman rescued from trafficking, and they may or may not be successful. But they can also take that same $3,000 and speak to thousands of high school students in 1 year to warn them about traffickers and provide them with some legitimate job connections. Beginning of Life has developed a very positive reputation among high school students, administration, parents, in the local high schools as a result of their high-energy assembly programs and after-school programs educating about trafficking. And although it is costly, they also have a very successful rehabilitation and restoration program in the city for exploited women. They provide counseling, housing, job training, and a good chance of becoming self-sufficient once they've been rescued. Beginning of Life is now planning to replicate their successful model into Central Asia because the needs there look just like the needs in Moldova. The women are being trafficked throughout the world. And Global Women's going to partner with them to help them make that happen. Yulia's husband, who is also a former pastor, shared with me they also help trafficking awareness. They have trafficking awareness programs in churches. And he said, you know, Cindy, it's very hard working with churches in our country. It's a challenge because many Christians in Moldova want to close their ears and bury their heads in the sand when they're asked to talk about anything having to do with sex, as he says. And here our naive young women are disappearing all around us, and no one understands why or where they're going. So this is a partner that we're with, and here's how you can partner with Global Women to offer a response to human trafficking. You can pray. Use our resources or any of the resources represented from the groups here today. Pray for the issue. Pray for those working around the world like Yulia and her team, and pray for those who have been trafficked. And as you pray, I always like to warn folks, God may call you to respond further. You can also give. If you'd like to give through Global Women, those funds would be given to Beginning of Life to help them with their prevention and rehabilitation programs. And on our website throughout the year, you will find also listed some opportunities maybe to give items that would go to support the work of Yulia and her team. You can go. I'll be leading a team, a Global Women team to Moldova August 8th through the 18th to assist Beginning of Life with a camp for women who have been trafficked or abused. Our team will also provide a 2-day retreat of rest and refreshment for the Beginning of Life team who works so hard throughout the year on behalf of the women in their country. We also hope in 2013 to take a group of English teachers to assist in the prevention programs in the high schools. And if you want something else to do, you can observe International Women's Day, March 8th. On our Global Women website, you'll find ideas on how to observe this day as a day of awareness and prayer for trafficking and all sorts of issues that affect women. Also on our website, you could sign up to receive our newsletter that will keep you updated with more Pray, Give, Go opportunities. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Cindy. Let's see. You see Cindy's contact information there, but I'll just remind everybody that we are recording this and it will be available online, and so you'll have access to this later. And now we have Charity with us. Charity Magnuson is with NC Stop Human Trafficking. Charity, talk to us.
Hi. So first of all, thanks so much for inviting us to be part of this. NC Stop Human Trafficking is the statewide community member coalition in North Carolina, and we have about 1,000 members statewide, and we are a group of people who try to collaborate amongst the various anti-trafficking organizations and individuals in North Carolina. There's about 27 different anti-trafficking organizations in North Carolina. And so when I started NC Stop Human Trafficking, in 2009, I was looking for ways to be involved, and the question kept coming up, how do I help? And when I was looking through all the major, not-for-sales and the Free the Slaves and, all the major international justice missions, there wasn't a whole lot that could be done about trafficking, specifically in North Carolina. And so I realized that there were other people who had the same question, how can we help? And so looking through all the different types of anti-trafficking work, we categorized anti-trafficking work into our PAVE model, which is prevention, advocacy, victim services, and education awareness. And so everybody obviously has different levels of skills and talents and time commitment. And the purpose of NC Stop Human Trafficking is to answer that question for folks. So we have regional meetings in 15 different areas across North Carolina once a month, where people can literally and figuratively come to the table and talk about how we can work together and do campaigns together. Now you can go to the next screen. So North Carolina has been ranked consistently in the top 10 in the United States for trafficking, mostly because of our location. We're a source, destination, and a transit state. So victims of trafficking come from North Carolina, they come to North Carolina, and they go through North Carolina. We also have a lot of trafficking that's happening within North Carolina. When we looked at the numbers of trafficking, if you want to go back one slide there, no. When we look at the victims of trafficking in the United States, the numbers are less than 20,000 foreign nationals brought into the U.S. who are trafficked per year. The majority of them are for labor. But estimates of the number of American citizen minors, domestic minor sex trafficking in the United States, between 200 to 300,000 children at high risk of trafficking per year. And so we really think that's probably the biggest problem, and that's a very conservative estimate based on some studies by Susan Weiner out of Pennsylvania. So if we want to go to the next, then when we talk about prevention, advocacy, victim services, and education awareness, probably easier to explain it backwards. Education awareness is pretty self-explanatory. Kind of talk to anybody who's willing to listen, and we certainly do a lot of that. We do a lot of, speaking engagements and, movies and film screenings, as well as, we had a group of students at UNC Charlotte just did a rave for a cause. We did a fashion show with some at-risk kids, and so different ways to reach different levels of communities. Nell, do you want to go to the next slide? Victim services. So we are we're a community member, so we don't go rescue people, but we work with the law enforcement in North Carolina when they have victims or victims come through service providers. They often need many things that they just don't have money for in their grants, and so we go to the community members and we raise money for things that people need in North Carolina. Advocacy can mean different things to different people, but for us it means changing laws and policies, and there's a lot of things that can go along with that. So advocacy days and education awareness to lawmakers. Democratic National Convention is coming to Charlotte in September, so we're focusing on that right now. And then prevention is probably the hardest thing to explain, but basically being involved long-term, the same as Cindy was just talking about, there are a lot of people who are vulnerable to trafficking in the United States because of the same reasons that they're vulnerable in Moldova. They don't have a whole bunch of opportunities, real viable options, and that's what prevention is about. It's long-term mentoring and being involved in these kids' lives. The next page. No? And that's, again, the same thing. So this will probably be online somewhere so people can look more into this and then get to the next page. And so basically anybody who's interested in fighting trafficking in North Carolina would be part of NC Stop Human Trafficking, and our job is to connect different people doing different things, and we'd be happy to talk to anyone in North Carolina about that.
Thanks, Charity.
Thank you.
Okay, we now have Aaron Glenn. Aaron is CBF Field Personnel currently in California. Aaron, share with us.
Oh. Hey everybody, glad to be part of this. I guess being Field Personnel CBF, we are trying to live out the cooperative part of our title, and we have been cooperating with different organizations over the last few years. One in particular is Oasis, and you're going to hear from Kevin Potter after I speak, a person or two after I speak. And I've also been getting a master's in social work. Thought I needed to add a little bit of debt to my life and a little extra something to do. And so I've been really working around the clock, and I've been working at CAST, the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, over this past year. CAST was the first organization in the country that has, it's not on the slide, but it has complete services for survivors of trafficking. It has legal services, social services, which is the part that I'm working in, and also a confidential shelter. And in LA, there's over 10,000 victims of human trafficking. It's what the estimate is from last year. If you go to that page there, CAST got started in 1998 in response to the previous slide, 72 times that were thing is, if you see in the sign it says "Welcome to Friendly El Monte," and just right next to it was where 72 Thai women were working, and most of them had been there for over 8 years. So it's really kind of incredible. Sorry, I got something here on my computer is going to time out on me. If you go to the next slide now, the next few slides show the interior of this location. Are you there now? Oh yeah, so this is right, these are the perimeter of the building. If you go back just one, was that razor wire, and essentially the way that it came to the attention of the police is just a common citizen that was driving around actually saw through this outer facade and saw that there was razor wire, and they thought it was just really looked suspicious, and called, and then they raided and found the people locked in there just in the regular neighborhood. If you go to the next slide, you can see this was labor trafficking. It wasn't sex trafficking, which is something that I think most of us have heard about it. If you've heard about trafficking, it's generally in the sex area, and we've already heard a speaker, Kristen, earlier talk about labor. And so this is one of the sweatshop on the inside. If you go to the next picture, there's where they were sleeping. The next picture, that's a company store. So it was one of these situations where they had to buy everything at the company store, and so bars of soap were $20, and things were ridiculously overpriced, so they would perpetuate the debt that they were in. Here's a picture from the LA Times of some of the women. And essentially, if you go to the next slide, are you there? Oh, okay. Yeah. And just I mentioned those things. The first shelter opened in 2004. It's a relatively new organization, but because of their direct client services, I think it's really unique, and it's a unique opportunity for people to learn. We have attorneys are always going and doing trainings in different locations. I think there would be a potential. If you go to the next slide, which has what can you do, there's a potential if we kind of know about this resource, and since I'm connected with it as a CBF Field Personnel and also connected to OASIS, and they're working in LA as well, I think there's just the potential to do a lot of things. Some of the obvious ones would be groups of individuals, people that wanted to come out and volunteer with CAST, volunteer with OASIS. We could organize things. We've hosted student.goers in the past that have worked with our partners.
Aaron, you might
yeah.
want to explain what student.go is.
Okay, yeah, student.go is a program that CBF has where students, they can be grad students, undergrad students, can go through CBF as an umbrella organization to work with field personnel in an area that we have connections with. So, for example, we had two young ladies that were I think they were still in college, they were still in undergrad, and they came out a few summers ago, worked with our partners in OASIS. One of the students was a Chinese international student, and she helped them do a lot of stuff in Mandarin in some of the predominantly Chinese areas in LA. So there's a lot of that kind of connection, I think, in a larger way. I think I and Stephanie, my wife, would be willing to serve as a resource to you and to your family, connecting you with other organizations, or also just with continuing this discussion about trafficking. I think it's just been we didn't want to miss out on the connections that we have here. So.
Oh, thanks, Aaron, very much. Okay, so next we have Lita Sample, who is also CBF Field Personnel. Just a minute, Lita. There you go. Okay, Lita, talk to us.
Hi, Nell. Thank you. First of all, we've served in the San Francisco Bay Area in California, and we work among refugees, immigrants, and international students, and then also in the anti-human trafficking awareness and legislation area. I wanted to mention first about CBF. CBF is becoming more and more involved in human trafficking, anti-human trafficking efforts. And so they've provided a couple of places where people can talk and network, and one of them is the fellowship blog, which you see there, that you can go to and talk about human trafficking and what's going on in your area. Then also on Facebook, we have a page that's called CBF Justice and Peacemaking Ministries, and so that's kind of a community that we have, different communities, and this one in particular, human trafficking, falls under that community. So, and basically, it's as you can read right there, that it's a group of people that really care about different issues, different human issues, including human trafficking, that can get together and to network together. In addition to that, we also have field personnel that are doing things to raise awareness of this issue, encouraging other people to be involved. We have some personnel that are involved directly with survivors, and some personnel that are involved in legislation. So we have a bit of everything, and these resources you can go directly to the CBF website and find a little bit more on resources and what we're doing. Let's see, just to let you know a little bit about what I've been doing in the California area is going to be more involved in legislation. And I think that one thing that we talk about is how do we stop human trafficking right at the root of it? How can we prevent more of it happening and people continue to be enslaved? And so one of the things we feel that is really important is to really try to increase the penalty. You know, in California, the penalty for being caught as a trafficker can be just 4 years in prison, which is crazy. You know, if you enslave a person or if you force them into prostitution, it's so little. And so many times the prosecutors won't actually use our laws in a trafficking situation because they're so weak. And it's really not a deterrent for traffickers to stop doing it. And so what we've done is we've tried to increase those laws and tried to make them more strict so that the traffickers will not want to do it. And that those traffickers that are caught, they would really get a stiff penalty for that. And in addition, what's really beautiful about this piece of legislation is that the fines are being increased as well, and so those increased fines aren't going just into government pockets, they're going directly back into anti-human trafficking organizations to help them continue their work. So this has been a really exciting thing that we've been a part of. And so this is the year that we're hoping it's going to be placed on the ballot. And so we've been working about 3 years now on this, and 2012 is the big election, and we're doing it really roots up. So we're trying to do this by gathering signatures all up and down California and trying to place it on the ballot. And that takes about 800,000 signatures, so about more than half of them are being paid petitioners, and then there's also many volunteers all over California that are trying to gather these signatures. So I think that the absolute last deadline is in April to get all of our signatures in. So, and we're more than halfway there, so that's exciting. So anyway, but you know, you can always find out what your state is doing and maybe be more involved in legislation. And then just to also let you know that I've been in North Carolina, and I'm real excited to hear about the NC Stop Human Trafficking. I've seen a lot about that. And then also in Raleigh, there's an organization called PATH NC, which is Partners Against Trafficking Humans. And it's agencies and organizations partnering together to talk about how they can help people in North Carolina become aware and to be involved, and then also to spread the word. So they actually have a just kind of like a pamphlet kind of thing that you can get and you can pass out to your friends and start talking to your friends about what human trafficking is and how you can be aware of it and how you can help stop it. So, and I would be happy to send anybody a copy of those if you want. So you can just let me know. Just chat with me on the chat box, and I'll mail it to you.
Great.
Thanks,
All
Nell.
right. Thank you, Lita.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next, we have Kevin Potter with Oasis. Kevin, talk to us.
Hi, yeah, my name is Kevin Potter. I'm the spiritual director for Oasis USA here in the States. Oasis USA is part of a global family. We're in about 10 countries, but 33 communities, different communities around the world, in Africa and Asia. I used to live in Mumbai with helping to fight trafficking over there with women and children who were HIV and women and children who were in the slums of Mumbai. Oasis, the trafficking situation for Oasis came out of our work with communities. We work helping the ostracized in the community become reintegrated back into communities. So we're we're really for community and giving each individual their God-given potential, getting to their God-given potential within a community. And that's focused us on issues of trafficking. So OASIS started something called Stop the Traffic, which is now a global movement of several thousand organizations across the USA, raising awareness and also lobbying corporate governments. The President is now a special advisor to the United Nations GIFT program, which is the global initiative fighting human trafficking. And actually in Bangalore in December, they rescued over 300 children from beggar rackets, working with the local police and other key NGOs in the area. Then, because we're focused on community, there's also a focus on then reintegration for the children, either back to the families where they were, back to the communities where they were, and also all into safe places, safe communities that we also run, but also connected with other people. Here in the US, we have developed traffic-free communities. Those traffic-free communities, as we are for community, we help local people to get involved in their own local area. Trafficking can look different in each situation here in the US. So in Pasadena, the traffic-free community is actually focusing on young people who are at risk from foster care and group home care, and that's a key place. We work with a community in San Gabriel, and that's a Chinese community, and there it's labor trafficking. There are what they call house hotels, which individuals, immigrants come through, and we've helped with the Chinese church involved in the local survey there. Each community has different needs, so we help each community research and resource their exact situation. That can be lobbying governments, it could be working with the police with freedom bags. When the police go in and do a raid and they bring the girl out, the girl often has nothing when she comes out from being raided, and so there's these freedom bags that the girl can use and have, which can give her a sense of worth and support, and also helps in developing the relationship. We also help communities get actively involved. So as we've been involved in raising the awareness of human trafficking, some people in some of the churches that we've been involved in have made it known that they come from a trafficked situation and they're still in an area of danger. We don't look to develop the resources, because there's things like CAST with Aaron and organizations that already have the resources. We want to interconnect those resources, but the individual who's being trafficked needs a community to care for her and support her. If you go to the next slide, please. Can you pop the next slide? You can go to the next slide.
What can you do? Is that the next one?
No, yeah, is the next one? Oh, sorry, I missed that. Sorry, yes. Sorry if you go back.
Okay.
So yeah, sorry, I missed it. So we help individuals set up traffic-free communities where they can be a community support to the girl or the individual that's trafficked, and that could be in relation to labor trafficking, sex trafficking. We mentor groups, helping them to equip and be equipped and empowered and to advocate for slave-free products. It's similar to what we've just heard. We're involved with the Pasadena Fair Trade Group, and then one of the key ones we're finding is mobilizing care for survivors, as I just mentioned, being able to come around and help an individual walk through the journey of restoration, which is key. And if you want to know more, please, the next slide gives my telephone number, address, and web address. Contact me, and we'd be more than happy to see how we can help you develop traffic-free communities.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, that is the end of our slide presentation. I'm going to take a minute here and unmute all of our speakers. We do have another CBF Field Personnel on with us from Southeast Asia. Cindy Rubel, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Sure. Cindy, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on in your area?
Okay, I'm glad to be with all of you, and I've already heard quite a few connection points for me, so I'm excited to make some of those connections today. I work in Penang, Malaysia, and my husband and I also work in Indonesia, and after living in Indonesia for 9 years and moving to Malaysia, we found that there's a lot of connections happen between the two countries, particularly in labor trafficking. And I have been involved primarily here working through the Women's Center for Change, trying to prevent child sexual abuse, and do a lot of community talks, give to adults and also to students in schools. And there are links between that, obviously, and human trafficking. But I was very glad to hear quite a few of you mention that labor trafficking is one of your focuses, because that's something that here is an incredibly large problem. We have almost 4 million migrant workers in the country, and about half of them are undocumented. And so the abuses in that area are significant, and were highlighted in the latest anti-trafficking in persons report by the State Department. I also partner with JUMP, which is a local network trying to work for the rights of migrants and refugees, and their new motto is Jump for a Slave-Free State. And so I'm a new participant in that group, and hope to get more heavily involved this next year, having just returned from the States recently. But I work primarily doing things to educate regarding human trafficking and to raise awareness. I attended an online seminar this past year where I thought that an analogy that was made by the speaker was significant in terms of the importance of raising awareness. She commented that trying to prevent human trafficking is a lot like having a bucket of water and you've given somebody a teaspoon and you've told them you want them to empty the bucket. And she said, but if nobody notices that the spigot is still running above the bucket, you never get the bucket empty. And preventing human trafficking by raising awareness is a lot like cutting off the spigot, that people want the glory of rescue, but we really need more people on the front lines of trying to prevent it. So that's an area in which I am involved. I'm also the facilitator of the Justice and Peacemaking community on Facebook, which was mentioned earlier. And we just had a meeting last night about some changes that are coming around where we're going to be able to greatly expand that site. And I'm very excited about it because it will give all of you a place, too, that you can post links to your various organizations, and that we can partner together, and it will become a very viable online community where we can resource and connect with each other. And already in this seminar today, I can see links between your side of the world and my side of the world, and I think that's important global networking.
Thanks, Cindy. Well, okay, I want to say to all of our participants, and I know that we do have some churches on, and so those of you who are with churches, we have about 6 minutes that we can take your questions. If you look down at the bottom, you see a chat box, and if you will just pop your question in that chat box, then I'll be sure that our speakers hear your question. But while you're preparing those and putting those in, whichever one of you would care to speak to this, one question that I get a lot is about fair trade. What is it? How can it make a difference? And how can I know that I'm purchasing fair trade items? I think it's important for our folks to know that we do have a global voice, and I think fair trade is one of the ways to do that. So would one of you care to speak to fair trade?
Yeah, I will, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay.
This is Kristen Carr, for those of you who don't know.
Yes, not for sale. Yeah, Fair Trade, the Fair Trade Federation is actually a nonprofit organization, and they are a third-party verification system. And so getting a fair trade stamp on your product ensures that you have gone through a rigorous set of prerequisites, and it says that you have cleaned up your supply chain, that you have transparency in place, obviously third-party verification because you've hired the Fair Trade Federation or Fair for Life, one of those sort of organizations, to look through and do check-ins in your different manufacturing plants, agricultural work, whatever's involved in the supply chain to produce your product. Those stamps ensure that your product has been ethically made, ethically sourced, ethically crafted. Having those stamps is not required in order for your product to have been ethically made or ethically sourced. There's a little bit of a debate out there about fair trade, saying that these large companies that have money to hire Fair for Life or the Fair Trade Federation to be a third-party verification system and put their stamp on their product is giving larger companies an unfair market advantage over some of the smaller companies, the mom-and-pop companies that have been doing it the right way for a really long time, but just don't have the funding that they need in order to hire a third-party verification system that is as well known as one of those fair trade organizations. And so there's kind of a debate back and forth as to whether it's a benefit or whether it's not a benefit. Is it closing down some of the mom-and-pop shops that we really want to support, that benefit local economies, that provide sustainable employment to those who are in vulnerable populations, especially internationally? But the idea here is that in order to speak into labor trafficking as a consumer, it's just making wise choices about the product that you're purchasing, ensuring that it has been made ethically. And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to have a fair trade stamp or a Fair for Life stamp or some of those other certifications, because again, that's just a third-party verification system. Those are each unto themselves nonprofit organizations that have been hired. Does that help speak into it a little bit?
Yeah, sure, thanks. Well, I wonder, we don't have anybody who's popped in with a question, so I might ask another one of you. Can one of you just say the value of partnering with others in addressing anti-trafficking?
I just highlight that it's vitally important that we partner together. If we don't, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and we actually don't get to see the gaps that are there, because we're all reinventing the wheel. And each of us has gifts and resources that the others can use. And by working together, we give a a clear, cohesive picture to the rest of the world and the rest of the people in the city, in a sense of that we are working together. It gives it doesn't we stop the gaps, if you want. That's what I would say. And that individuals out there, it's like with the fair trade, when you all work together, companies and individuals that are involved in trafficking can see finances being used in the correct way, and you
Great.
You cover those gaps where the gaps you can easily slip through for people with traffic, and you're able to access all the resources for the individual who is trafficked. And there are a multiplicity of resources, and some of the organizations actually are not fully aware, whereas other organizations are. By getting them all together, we can get a clearer picture for that individual.
Great, thank
I'm happy
you.
to address that question too.
Okay.
So, I mean, the whole idea of anti-stop human trafficking was this collaborative model. You know, that there actually are a lot of anti-trafficking folks out there doing a lot of anti-trafficking work, and obviously traffickers don't stay within one area. I mean, that's kind of the definition, right? So having us all be on the same page and work together. So North Carolina, and that's all I can speak to, I'm not sure about other states, but we have a direct service provider coalition, and we have 7 task forces across the state. And then our coalition is the community member side, and I act as liaison between the direct service providers and the community members. And so the idea of collaboration is instead of all of us trying to do everything, we can have some people focus on some things and be much more effective, and to use programs that are already in place. For example, Not for Sale in North Carolina has a North Carolina director, and Not for Sale has a lot of great programs that people can use to fight trafficking. And so through the networks and the monthly meetings that we have, and kind of reaching out through our membership committee to all of our colleagues in North Carolina, we can all decide to do the same campaign, like Freedom Sunday or something, distributing the information for Free to Work and sharing stuff on Facebook with all those people. So it's much more effective when you just have a group of people who are really tied together. And it's hard. It's really hard to reach across organizational boundaries sometimes, but it's really, really, really important. And that's to make sure that people are doing effective things, not so you don't want everybody wasting time, filling out 501c3s or grant applications. That takes a long time.
Right.
It's easier, if you have one person who specializes, and then everybody else can do other things as well. And not reinventing the wheel, that's the biggest pet peeve, I think.
Absolutely, right? Well, listen, we want to say thank you to all of our panelists. We've come to the end of this webinar. For those of you who may have others that you want to invite, we will do the same program again in about 15 minutes, and we welcome anybody who would care to join us for that. But we want to say thank you to our panelists, and thanks to each of you for joining us today, and I hope you've had a blessed evening. Look forward to connecting with you again. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Okay, well, let's just begin with a word of prayer. Lord Jesus, but for those of you who are on that have a question, I invite you to go down to the chat box that you see there at the bottom and just write in your question. We don't have one right now, so let me just ask one. Something that I've been hearing a lot about. I'm sure some of you have followed what's gone on in Sweden, but also Free the Captives here in Houston. Have any of you become involved in a reduce the demand type of campaign? I know, Lita, you did kind of speak to that as far as some of the fines against traffickers, etc. But what do y'all think about campaigns that that basically fine the Johns, people who are buying sex? Okay, I have our speakers unmuted.
I can speak a little bit to that. Obviously, I think that we all know that this is a supply and demand issue. I mean, if there wasn't a demand, there wouldn't be a supply. That really is the biggest problem, and we certainly want to rescue victims and turn them into survivors, and we're going to continue to keep on doing that. But you can rescue people all day long. If there's still going to be a demand, there's going to be more victims. That's really the biggest problem, is addressing the demand. So how can you do that, probably is the better question. And, you know, as far as finding Johns, that's certainly not the province of community members. That's the job for law enforcement officers. You know, and we obviously have to let them do their jobs. But there are some pressures that can be put on, and we're talking about sex trafficking here. So if we talk about labor trafficking, we do have to be really clear about our own complicity as Americans in labor trafficking. You know, we are the largest consumer of items made through slave labor. And so if we want to get in the SUV and drive to Walmart and buy things for $1, that's not how much it costs. So if you're not willing to pay for that with your money, then somebody is paying for that somewhere with their life. So, you know, fair trade, free trade, direct trade, that's a great step for people to take to reduce the demand for labor trafficking. But if we're talking about sex trafficking, then obviously we're talking about Johns. And, you know, and that, mostly it's men, so just to say that for ease of, you know, of linguistics. But, you know, this is where I think really the faith community comes in. It's definitely a moral issue. I mean, it's, you know, exploitation of children, wanting to have sex with children, and even, you know, adults, but that's a whole different conversation. But, you know, there are things that we can do as community members to put pressure on people to understand that, you know, you're not just renting a body part. This is a human being, and you can't compartmentalize, you know, the person who's sitting next to you is human and the other person is not. You know, so we have to really it's really an equality issue. Human trafficking is an equal rights issue. It's not a sex issue. It's somebody is taking away someone's right to self-determination. And so when we get down to it, it's basically, I think you're less than me for whatever reason, your age or your race or your sex. And so when we can address those issues, then we can have someone see that it's not possible for me to think it's okay to traffic somebody else for my own profit. And that's where we have to get to actually really stop human trafficking instead of just rescuing victims.
Absolutely. Cindy Rubel does make note here that Sweden has almost eliminated human trafficking by making it illegal to buy sex, and they do have, they've set a precedent, I think, there. Kevin, were you fixing to say something?
Yes, it was. The other thing is the I would say is, I totally agree, it's the realization as well. Often we can think it's outside the church, and actually the use of pornography and various things are just as much inside the church. We're saints and sinners within the church. And there's a huge area of raising that awareness and getting men to be able to step up and be people of integrity. I think it's something like 70% of the girls that are trafficked into California are caught within the sex industry. San Fernando Valley, it's the capital of the porn industry, and it's becoming more and more easy and mainstream, and there's a huge area of raising that awareness. I've seen films where cars are going around the tracks picking up the girls, and as the car goes in to pick up the girl, you look at the back of the car